general brief overview of the Burmese human rights situation under the Aung San Suu Kyi's government.
Well, we're still concerned about a number of major issues in Burma. From what we see, there is intent from the government to address a number of these human rights issues, but we want them to do it more systematically. We want them to be more clear about all the things that they have to cover. You know, we sent a long letter to President U Tin Kyaw in May 4th of this year, laying out our concerns. And those concerns, first and foremost, look at the different issues and the different laws that are still on the books in Burma. The situation is one where you have many rights-abusing laws that have piled up over the years, both from the colonial period and actually during the period of military rule. We have been urging the government to use their majority in the lower and upper house of the parliament to go after these laws, to either revoke them or to amend them and bring them in line with international human rights standards. Well, there's a whole set of laws that are, well, different articles within the penal code that restrict freedom of expression, that restrict public assembly, restrict other basic civil and political rights. And what we're seeing, the problem that we're seeing is that the local authorities, the police and the township officers, know these laws very well. And they have continued to use them over the years against NGOs, civil society activists, and others. So you continue to have, by using these laws, you have these local authorities who are arresting people for protesting or saying certain things, and then we see these prosecutions go forward. It's because the laws are still in the books. It's like having a loaded gun on the table. You know, you can always use it. And these officials are not necessarily reporting to Aung San Suu Kyi and the NLD. They are members of the General Administration Department under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And as you know, under the Constitution, the Ministry of Home Affairs is dominated by the military. So there's still a period of divided rule now. And this is one of the things that we're concerned about when we talk about transition issues, is what issues can be taken up and dealt with now by the government using the powers it has, recognizing, of course, that it also has to deal with a military that has its own power base. It has its own economic interests, and that, obviously they don't want to provoke that military to do something against the government. It's a fine line to tread, but actually I think that if the NLD takes on these laws, for instance, some of the rights and religion laws, some of the issues of the Public Assembly and Peaceful Procession Act, and further amend that beyond what's already been done, I think that they would have a lot of support from the people of Burma.
And as you know, this is very delicate and sensitive issue, and government is trying to handle it, very, carefully. Mm-hmm. But regardless of that, regardless of their attempts, there's a several protests in Rakhine State in past few weeks. What is your view, and how do you think this situation will go?
Human Rights Watch is very clear on the principle that exists in the international human rights conventions and standards, which is that a group of people have the right to self-identify. And the UN Special Rapporteur, Yang Hee Lee, and others have said this as well, and we will stick by that principle. So if the Rohingya want to call themselves the Rohingya, they should be able to do so. The central issue is, what is the government actually doing to end the discrimination and the rights abuses that are being perpetrated against the Rohingya? Recognizing that, of course, there needs to be a solution in Rakhine State that deals with both Rakhine and Rohingya concerns. But so far, it's still been one-sided. It's still been what the government is doing for the Rakhine community, what the government is concerned about coming from the Rakhine community. Unfortunately, the Rohingya are being talked about, but they're left out of the conversation. They're still locked down in these internally displaced persons camps. They're still restricted by local ordinances that restrict their right to movement, their rights to livelihood, their right to access services, their ability to marry and have children. All these things have not changed. And that is why the international community is so concerned. is that, you know, this is a situation that is untenable. It is a situation that needs to be resolved. And, you know, we have yet to see much from the government except expressions of concern about using this term. You know, what is their overall strategy? How are they going to address these issues? You know, they haven't come up with a clear plan. And more importantly, they also have failed to take up the issue of accountability for what happened in 2012. Well, I mean, they have to bring representatives of the two communities together in some sort of format for dialogue to sort this out. And the government has to treat the two communities equally in those talks. You know, there has to be meaningful talks leading somewhere. You know, you cannot continue to sort of negotiate by the media, where, you know, the Aung San Suu Kyi-led government says that, you know, we're not going to call them Rohingya, we're not going to call them Bengali, we're going to call them Muslims in Rakhine State, you know, and still the Rakhine protest. So, you know, there has to be a willingness by the government to commit some serious political capital to make this happen. And that means, you know, having efforts to ensure that you have representatives of both communities together there. I mean, ultimately the development of Rakhine State is not going to work unless you have everybody in Rakhine State involved. You know, the trading system, the agriculture, the fisheries, all these things, you know, were continuing along over the decades of military rule with both communities, the Rakhine and the Rohingya, involved. You know, it's only now and since 2012 that that's been torn apart. It needs to be put back together, and economic development has to benefit both communities equally, not just one community over the other.
Nationalist group like the Mabata, and they keep giving the pressure to the new government not to, in their view, to favor the Muslim groups.
I think that there's a very serious problem with the Mabata continuing to spread hate speech against other religions, particularly against the Muslims. You know, there is the right to freedom of expression, which is an important human rights principle that has to be upheld. But hate speech that instigates violence is criminalized in many places all around the world. And so, you know, the Mabata is, again, you know, doing things that are going to create problems for the sort of multi-ethnic, multi-religious, diverse, yet sort of forward-moving Burma that we hope to see. You know, it is a destabilizing element, and it is a group that has, you know, spearheaded the passage of clearly discriminatory rights-abusing laws, the race and religion laws, which we view should be revoked. Revoke all 4 laws, and basically take up a policy of mediating between religion, promoting fellowship between different religions, just as Burma had for many decades before the last 5 to 10 years. You know, if you look at who were in that cabinet room when Aung San was assassinated, you had prominent Muslims who were leaders of the independence movement who were also killed at that time. You had people who were working together regardless of their religious faith. This is the Burma that I think people should be upholding and looking to, and not the narrow, hate-filled vision of the Mabata, which is trying to divide people and trying to bring one group up and push another group down.
Okay, finally about peace process.
Well, we're very concerned that the Tatmadaw has not changed the way it operates in these ethnic states, that we continue to see rights abuses committed by the military against civilians. And this is happening in Kachin State, this is happening in Shan State, it's happening also against Rakhine in Rakhine State. That has to stop. There has to be a realization that the Burmese army cannot operate the way it has in the past, basically scorched earth, doing whatever it wants because using a justification that there's a conflict there. We're very concerned also that humanitarians from the UN and from the International Committee of the Red Cross are being prevented from going into areas in Shan and Kachin State to provide humanitarian assistance simply because the Tatmadaw doesn't control those areas. there has to be equal access for humanitarian support and assistance for these displaced persons to, again, either evacuate that area or to receive basic assistance and support. We thought that when there would be a new government coming in that these issues would be taken care of, that the continued problem of humanitarian assistance would be dealt with in a more even-handed way by the government, but we're not seeing that. And so, again, we have people fleeing for their lives and no accountability from the military for those human rights abuses that they're inflicting. In terms of the larger peace process, our concern is that the local people, representatives of women, representatives of local communities and others, are not given a voice in this process as well. You just have a dialogue between the government, the Tatmadaw, and some of these ethnic leaders. There has to be, I think, a recognition that rights abuses also have to be on the table, to have the resolution here. Because, people are not prepared to go back into conflict areas. If you talk to the refugees that are in Thailand, their concern about going back to Burma is that they don't want to be anywhere near a Burmese military base. They know very well how the Burmese military operates in terms of abusing the rights of civilians, and they don't want to be anywhere near them. So, there needs to be a recognition that these rights issues have a place at the table in the discussion about peace and, a federal union of Burma.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us your insight in times. And thank you very much.
Thank you very